Hello and welcome to Astrology Unplugged. I'm DiClemente with my partner Liza Jane Brown tonight. Tonight's a very special evening. During the next 90 minutes, we're going to be talking about a subject that you may have heard from us ad nauseum, because frankly, what happened when you are a planet watcher is during the past X amount of years, you'd watch Uranus and you watch Saturn and look at what Jupiter is doing. But frankly, what's happened during the last 10 years is you've been talking mostly about Pluto and Capricorn. It has become the story. And that's why so many articles I've written about have had that as the general background. And in astrological time, just a minute ago, a new guy came on the block. A new gal came on the block. She's big time. Her name is Eris, and she is just a minute ago, but she's big time, and she compares muchly to Pluto, but that's for several other shows. Tonight, Liza and I are going to try to give you a little bit of a background on Pluto, 3 parts of what she has been doing, what we expected, what we have actually witnessed. We're now the sun is now at 20 degrees. 2/3 of the way through Capricorn, and then looking a little bit into the future. So if we go back in time to about 06, I was writing for a local magazine in Pittsburgh, and I saw Pluto coming to Capricorn. Now, why is this a big deal? Well, if you look at our parents that had Pluto in Cancer and Pluto in Leo, the baby boomers, when Pluto changes signs, you get your generations. Well, we knew it was going into Capricorn, and the reason it was such a big deal was because between 1995 and 2008, Pluto was in the flippant sign of Sagittarius. And you were seeing a lot of people live for the future, mortgage their futures, rental cars, credit cards, mortgage this, credit card that. And we could see that we were being collectively very flippant. And we knew that just like that juxtaposition between Libra and Scorpio, that juxtaposition between Sag and Capricorn was heavy duty. It was so heavy duty that Pluto went into Capricorn on January 25th of 2008. And you already saw the economic crash happening in 2007. As a matter of fact, when you look at it globally, it goes back to the Enron days. So we saw the financial crash happening. And then I decided, since I do have 3 planets in Libra, that I needed some help. And I told my partner at the time, boy, I would really like to learn from somebody. I'm always teaching. I'd like to have somebody that knows a good bit about it. And I think within a couple of days, I saw a little ad in the newspaper. Little tiny ad says, if you'd like to start studying Saturn going into Leo, which was August of 15 or 16. Anyhow, it was her ad, and I was the only one that answered it. And that's how Liza and I met, was actually answering that classified. Mm-hmm. I went to meet her and found out she's got 41 years of astrology, and I got about 40. So we pretty much have it figured out a little bit, I think.
Yeah. We started way back when you calculated charts by hand and drew circles and had to do all the calculations yourself. So we're old timers.
And that really comes into play, because when the computer makes a mistake, you can tell right away, and most people can't. Okay, but now, what we're really trying to do, in all honesty, is to give you an education of what this meant at the time, what we foresaw. And Karen down on the bottom of the screen was one of our students at the time, and she's been with us the whole time, and she saw it growing during the whole time, and then watching the culture catch up with it. No pun intended, clash up with it. Okay. So the time is 2006. We've got 2 years till Pluto hits Capricorn. And we start to analyze what it's going to do. And the reason why it's so heavy in Capricorn It was back there when the United States went through its independence. It was almost a perfect 260 years ago. I can't remember the exact details now, but it was something like 1762, right before the revolution. Did Pluto go into Capricorn at that time? And Capricorn, these signs rule certain things in a society. And Capricorn things are things that are held up with pillars. So we knew our institutions and governments were going to be going through a lot of Pluto testing. All in all, we started writing a lot about it. We started getting the idea. And then the contribution, the great contribution that Liza started putting in, because Liza is a very strong Aquarian, and they're really good at realizing the ramifications of something. Do you realize what that means? And boy, she started blowing my mind, because she started talking all about the submerging, the emerging, and the groundbreaking, and the volcanic activity and problems in the sea. And then we started to see the oil spills in the Gulf and all those things happening. And you started talking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Pluto just rules everything very primal, as you all know. So I just kept coming up with ideas that I contributed about the natural phenomena that was happening. There were volcanoes through all this period of time. You remember the past years, tornadoes, tsunamis, earthquakes, the oil spills, as Rick said, and climate change has kind of crept up on us through this time, but we can now see that we've had such significant climate change since Pluto has gone into Capricorn.
Well, it just turns out that I have more of a bent towards what happens with people. And I had some ideas, but we quickly learned that the 10 years, the decade, here we say the decade in Pluto and Capricorn, what Pluto has raised hell with. Pluto has put in its gun sight, and Pluto has raised hell with codependency. That's exactly smack dab in the crosshairs. And there's many, many types of codependency. But if you are leaving everything to somebody else, and you're relying on mom and dad, and if you're relying on your partner, you'd be in trouble. And if you're trying to put the weight upon yourself, pick things up by yourself, and making efforts, Pluto, I wrote some nice articles about Pluto helping you. So that's the people who really had the tough time through this. And that also works at the country level. The country level, the family level, the psychological level. But we started to see people, we watched through the 10 years, and as it did, Liza's a big believer in the spiral. As we saw it during that time, each time Pluto would trigger something, and a few months later trigger again, and a few months later trigger again, there was a spiral effect, and it became more and more severe each time. People who were codependent that weren't doing anything about it started getting bruises. Then the next time they got hit, they got bigger bruises. Then the next time they got hit, they got bigger ones. So what you eventually find out, and it was a really slow shift, what you find out is these Pluto energies are evolutionary energies inside you, and they want out, they want expressed. And you may not realize it now, but I bet you talk to any psychologist, social studies, people are in general much stronger now than they were 10 years ago. People are much more independent. They're much more self-reliant. It may not be pleasant, but that's what I noticed.
And that goes to, when you're talking about codependency, it goes to people relinquishing their political and social power. You know, and people who have done that have not done well. And what we're seeing now is people are taking that back.
Because of errors.
Right. So.
And people also were giving their personal power away in relationships. And those things were blowing up in a very ugly way. And those things are changing too. So we started to see a lot. We wrote a lot of documents. A lot of the documents can be found on the starself.com page, listed by index or listed by subject. Just search by the word Pluto, and you'll see a lot of good, bad, and ugly about it. But we knew that the party was over. And the party was the Sagittarius party, where you just kept renting and renting and renting and credit, putting and borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and the bills came due in January 25th of 2008. And the bills came due. And immediately people started asking me, when's it going to be over? I said, well, you got 15 years.
That was when the first financial conglomerate in New York, it's January 25th, I think we found out about that, about it collapsing. And then they were like dominoes collapsing after that.
So what you saw through the years was this continual revelation of corruption. Well, these things weren't turning corrupt in 2008 and 9 and 10. They've been corrupt for quite a while, but they kept getting away with it. Just like the termites keep getting away with it, and you discover them in 2011, well, they've been eating at your timbers for 20 years. And what's the common thought? Well, if we don't look in the basement, maybe there won't be any termites down there. And that's a very common refrain for a Cancer country. We are a Cancer country, July the 4th. If you're Canadian, you're a Cancer country too. But your chart is less Cancerian. But anyhow, eventually systems rot. Eventually systems break down. They come to their end. And when you're mature, you face them, you do what you got to do, and you rebuild. Well, the first few stages, just like we expected, was a lot of whining. And then the second stage came on, and we knew that would happen, which is we're still in, a lot of blaming. People just still doing a lot of blaming. Democrats, Republicans, everybody's trying to blame. And then, fortunately, what we've seen is people are starting to own their own power. And you start to see less and less blaming. So I've had all this time to come up with one awful metaphor after another. So I've got a couple of really bad ones. It's really like I've said before. You get used to your Shetland pony outside. Cancer, the sign of Cancer in our book, Exquisite Zodiac, the sign of Cancer is the cosmic 11-year-old who shops at Spencer Gifts and gets all these little cute little plastic things around their neck. And it's a cute pre-adolescent sign. It doesn't mean a level of maturity, but they're very childlike. So as time went on, we would start to say, let's take your Shetland pony away from you because life is tough now. And we got this nice, great big stallion waiting for you outside. And people kept saying, I don't want that big stallion. I want my Shetland pony. And they're still going to this day. And a lot of people are pissed off. Who took my pony? And a lot of them are blaming Obama. One of the things in our notes is we underestimated how powerful and poisonous the Fox network would be.
And when you're talking about Cancer, you're talking about the Cancer energy that's in all of us as individuals, but you're also referring to the fact, again, that the United States is a Cancer country, as a collective.
That's right. So when the Pluto came through Capricorn, it's not done. What it means is you've got to step up. You, me, you, me. No more talking about my group, my company's policies, my president. Pluto hitting you hard is a time of individually we have to step up. This is not a lecture here. This is just flat out truth. And you're not going to step up if you're looking for the Shetland pony. And when you get on board that stallion, your butt's going to hurt. You are going to fall off. You are going to get injured. And like a good old Virgo, you climb back up and start riding. And that's because Pluto's job is what? Let's slow down and try to understand what Pluto wants. Because Pluto is very altruistic, but it's a hard ass. It's very tough. It's very distant. It's very cold. You ever have a Scorpio look right through you? They just look right through you. Like that evil Steven guy. He looks right through you. That's because they are looking right through you. Okay? And because they can't be BS'd. They look for the core truth. And they want the core truth. And they're very courageous, strong people. And I keep telling Scorpios, everybody's not like you. Take it easy. They don't have the courage that you have. So that's what it means to get on the big horse, is to start owning your power. And where did we see throughout society? We saw society, even though they bitch about it, society kept complaining and leaning on the government, the very entity that they kept complaining about. So where did we see socially, all throughout the country, where did we see these weaknesses start to be exhibited?
Well, certainly through what I see as like many flaws in the democratic process in the country related to what has been going on with the elections, and finding flaws in how our national and local governments and state level governments are operating. I could tell you stories for hours about what's going on in just our own little county here related to that, where things have been collapsing, the democratic process.
We are, if you don't know, we are in Southwest Pennsylvania, which is a pretty political area.
So certainly all that's been going on. I think all of our systems, like the school systems and the systems that deliver aid to people that are supposed to be institutions in our government, are going through changes. I think that we're seeing that our infrastructures, like our power grids, our systems of dams and all kinds of public works, water systems, and all of that are falling apart. And that's been happening for a long time, but it's just becoming real obvious with Pluto and Capricorn. Do we want to talk about what's going on with the churches and with religion now?
Well, I think we certainly want to get there, but I think the thing that needs pointed out is to realize these are natural systems. Astrology is a study of natural cycles, and eventually cycles wear out, and eventually cycles wear out if the system cannot get rid of the excrement, if the system cannot get rid of the poisons, if the system cannot gather honestly the toxins and get rid of the toxins. That's why Pluto rules that area of the body, or Scorpio rules that area of the body, the colon, etc., because it gathers the poisons and toxins and gets rid of it. Pluto rules things like garbage men. And when you see a garbage man, you should go out and say, "Thank you very much. I'm glad somebody's taking my garbage out." Imagine it piling up on your sidewalk, which has happened. So, astrology is a beautiful metaphor for the microcosm, macrocosm. And just like she was saying with churches, what happened is the lens of Scorpio started to shine on everything. We saw very clearly that we need a Constitution 2.0. Because 1.0 sure isn't working. There's too many powers to the president, El Presidente. There's too many powers there. It's not how it was meant to be. We got big problems and we can't do anything about it because of constitutional loopholes. So these guys did a hell of a job back in 1776, but it needs to be updated. So the number one thing I want to say before I move on is, because I was analyzing the Steelers chart. Now I saw it 5-6 years ago downfall in the Steelers system because they've always been a strong family-run football franchise. What happens when you start to lose during a Pluto time is you lose track of your mission statement. You lose your heart. How many times you go to a business that has this wonderful, strong mission statement and you love it, you go in and you feel good, and they're honoring, and through the years they peter out. They sway from their mission statement. And you sort of feel like you're the next dollar when you go in. And then you can just watch that business go down. So I think we started to see it in Penn State, certain college programs. We started to see it in the church, the biggest institutions we have.
Right. And what you're doing now is what I was going to interrupt you to do, which is start telling people what the stages of Pluto are that you wrote about and what stage we're in now, because we keep talking here tonight about how everything is decaying, and probably we need to talk
a good time to put that in.
Yeah.
I would recommend, in case you're new to Pluto, and in case we were talking earlier how important it is and how fortunate we are that we can put things in perspective. I have a document that's been out there for probably 10 years, and you can search my website. It's called The 4 Stages of Pluto. Okay? And I made them up myself from watching clients. I get my truths by getting a theory, then testing it on clients. And there really are 4 stages of Pluto. You can look at it as a person, as a family, as a country, as a world. The first stage of Pluto is, did you feel that? Oh, no, I didn't feel nothing. Did you feel that? Well, something's shaking. Maybe we need to go down the basement. Nah. First stage is denial. Okay? Is a dangerous stage. In the United States, remained in stage 1 for at least 5 years, maybe 7 years of that time. Stage 2, the dangerous, the unpleasant stage. Stage 2 is, it stinks, something's wrong, we got to deal with it, it's a drag, I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel, and you got a big pile of junk you got to deal with. Stage 2's tough. That's where the United States is now, stuck in stage 2. I have found human beings go through the 4 stages much faster than a country does, because stage 2 is going down the basement, throwing out the junk, cleansing, purging, whatever. Purging people, purging your diet, purging your life, cleaning up the junk. You don't even know why, but you just got to do because you can't breathe. Stage 3 is you continue to do stage 2, but you're starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. Boy, I'm starting to see the guys that come around me now aren't so bad. They're not so codependent. I'm starting to see better paychecks. I'm starting to see better things in my life, and I can see that they're directly related to the cleansing I've been doing. So stage 3 is very encouraging. There's no timetable on these. And stage 4 is a beautiful stage where you've done a lot of your work, much like Jan on the screen here, who is a close client of mine, and I've worked closely with her through the Pluto 4 stages. She's very close, if not secured in stage 4 now. She had to go through 1, denial, 2, do her work, stage 3, cleaning up, what am I doing it for? She did it boldly. And stage 4 is when you're up on that stallion and you're just riding it. You're up on the stallion and you're just riding it. And you can even be a little cocky if you want to. But you're owning your power. You're not making excuses pointing at other people. So you can look at the country and see how we're in stage 2, and you can see the wonderful things that are happening too. You can tell them that part. The wonderful things that come about when the masses get affected is you start to see.
Well, we were talking about this last night. Things that certainly fit the archetypes of Pluto and Capricorn that we either did not anticipate or just didn't realize how powerful and strong they were going to be. And he did. I got to put my glasses on.
Okay.
some of the things that we were thinking of are what's happening now with the Me Too and the LGBTQ movement. We really had a sense that the feminine energy was going to rise. And in fact, I was looking for it before we started tonight in one of Richard Tarnas's books, when he was talking about where we go from here with how we've kind of painted ourselves into a corner as far as like Western culture and philosophy. He said that the way out is through the rise of the feminine energy, and we knew about that, but this the power and the immediacy and the kind of suddenness of the rise of these two movements is absolutely wonderful, and we think that it is going to be part of a new culture rising in the world. But we just didn't see it coming the way it came. So, and that's been wonderful. So that's been a good
You
thing.
talked a lot about, right before it happened, you started talking about, we've got to start solving things from the grassroots level.
Oh,
Then you started to see it happening. Local communities trying to solve things at that level instead of sucking off the great teat of the government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do believe that's very important. And I think that as we see Pluto moving much closer to Aquarius, we're going to see more of that grassroots movement and things based on locality, like food being grown right in the area where it's being eaten, where we're going to see more of and a lot of technology is going to be responsible for this, but it's going to be very grassroots and practical and simple too. But businesses and other kinds of things, we've just gone through such a rise of major corporations and big box stores. And if you notice, that's something else that's fading away with of course the influence of the internet. So technology is going to be a part of that. Things that that weren't so great that we've seen that we didn't see coming as well are Rick always talks about the rise of Fox News and the massive influence that's had. We just when we watch the news, we just can never it's just hard to look at the GOP and the depths to which they will go and the lengths to which they will go to just subvert and sabotage anything that's for the common person. And along with that, the neo-Nazi movement is just, and the white power movement is just incredible. I don't think we expected that degree of hatred and potential for violence that we've seen. But then we're looking at, on the other hand of that, the rise of progressive movements and people re-examining socialism and things that, and we don't know if any of those things are perfect answers for sure, but the fact that we're examining all of these things and looking at them and trying to find ways to take care of people on the planet rather than keep them down is very encouraging.
Or even a mixture of democratic socialism.
Sure. Absolutely.
Now, another thing that became very obvious is a lot of people want to run back to the failed systems. We know in a lot of ways capitalism is a failed system. I can't say that across the board. There's some things about it that are very productive and healthy. But a lot of people have run back to doing things the old way, even though we know the old way is what keeps producing all this residue and all of these toxins. So you just can't run back to something because it's doable or it's comfortable or my family's okay. Heck with your family. That's the big disease we got. That's the big disease America's got. I'm okay. Whatever happens to you, too bad. That's a cancer shadow side. Okay, so Pluto watches these things. Pluto's got a very bad reputation, and it's very unfortunate because Pluto is very just. If it feels that what you're doing is life-supporting, it will support you. And if it doesn't, it will stop you. This is why when individuals go through Pluto transits, it's a heavy-duty time, and I spend a lot of time counseling people on what to do during these times. I don't get involved with their life, but I get involved with having them see what they're doing in terms of cleansing, letting go, owning your power. But when you look at some of the great figures in history, the Scorpions, the great Plutonian people, these people, like the Dan Rathers and the Walter Cronkites, they have a passion that's very pure, that's very strong and very dedicated, and Pluto will not let them sway from that. And that's why when you're going to a Pluto transit, all of a sudden your rules become harder on you because maybe you're not a Scorpio and you've been able to skirt things here and there. All of a sudden Pluto's on you, won't let you happen.
Because Pluto is about what's real and true.
Pluto's about what's real and true. Let's clean it up. And it treats marriages, like we said in our book, it treats marriages as if they are taking place with white satin all around, and they're very pure, and you're making a very solemn oath, because one of the bases of Pluto and Scorpio, one of the bases is the word betrayal. It just can't stand the thought of betrayal. Either I'm betraying somebody or somebody betraying me. You know, some people try to skirt the issues. You're not going to get away with that with Pluto. It's not going to happen. So as time went on, things got confusing. And there are 3 or 4 reasons that they got really confusing, and we started to go, what's going on? What's going on? Well, several things got involved. You had Pluto going into Capricorn, opposing all the planets in Cancer, and the United States chart has 3 planets in Cancer. So we started to get Pluto opposite our Venus. When the Federal Reserve Board started to get shaky, Venus ruling your money, your economic systems. We got Pluto opposite our Sun. We still are feeling that one, and that's a cultural identity crisis. That's saying the U.S. is not like it was all along, and, well, sure it isn't. What you do during the identity crisis is you don't try to BS yourself that yes, it is, like the Tea Party did. You try to say, boy, we have changed. We must admit it. We must look at it. And we must be honest about what we need to do. But mostly, and I've been barking about this for years, the number one thing Pluto did was being opposite the Sun. It puts Pluto in the 7th house. And in the 7th house of open enemies, it means that we, to survive as a we, as us, we have to start getting even. No, we have to start playing on a level playing field with other countries. People with strong Plutos in their chart almost always have this in their relationship, or this. They're dominating the partner is dominating them. Or sometimes it goes back and forth. Very unhealthy codependency. So when Pluto's been opposite our Sun, what are we seeing now? The rest of the world is starting to say, well, the heck with you, we'll go on by ourselves. You don't like the EU? You don't like the Paris Agreement? You don't like NATO? You don't like the UN? Well, all right, there's a bunch of us. We've been around a long time. We'll go it alone. And we're still under the guise of thinking how great we are. No one's going to touch us. And it's destructive. We're still being affected by the Pluto Sun. Then we had 7 passes of Pluto and Uranus squaring each other. And that caused a reemergence of all the 1964 stuff, of all the Medicaid, Medicare, LBJ stuff, women's rights, voting rights. That's why all that stuff came about. Now we're watching the Pluto starting to return. So in 2024, Pluto will be back where it started in 1770, whatever. And when a planet returns, that's a big deal. So the Pluto return will happen when Pluto's at 26 degrees of Capricorn. Right now it's at 18, 19, 20. So it ain't far from 26. So as the Pluto return happens in 2023, 2020, you're going to start to see the report card being given to us. The report card, this is why you're starting to see the earth shake, the earth taste bad, the incredibly sad story you're seeing in Flint, Michigan, where the babies can't drink water. And what you start to see after a while is Pluto in 101 astrology. Pluto is an impersonal planet. And that means if the earth has to go down the drain, so what? There's nowhere it's written that Americans have to win like in the movies. Pluto just might squash us out, and the planet will come back and be green and be healthy, and it's okay. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, mostly because I think we're being watched and we're being helped and we're being aided by extraterrestrials and by higher beings. I think they are helping us. But all this stuff's going on at one time. So in the middle of all that, after a while, it got to a point where I couldn't figure out what was going on. I couldn't figure it out, and I finally did. Get that book, please. That one right there.
Okay. All right.
And we absolutely became convinced, and it took a while because you have to realize new planets take time to ascertain. We've been studying Pluto for 80-some years, 1930. And then came along this lady. This is highly recommended. She is the planet discovered out beyond Pluto. She was officially named in 2005, so she's in her infancy. She has a lot to do with Me Too. She has a lot to do with the women rising, the feminine rising. So she's also a whole lot like Pluto. She's very similar. She's deeply passionate. She doesn't put up with stuff. And in a lot of ways, she's without a doubt more violent. If she has to become violent, she's violent. Pluto is not necessarily. But Eris will go there in order for people to be treated fairly. That's what Eris is uptight about, which is why it's being associated with Libra. Eris cannot stand people being treated unfairly. You attaining the heights without being fair about it. This is why you're hearing a lot of this stir amongst us. So you got the kids at Stoneman Douglas in Florida. You got the Me Too movement. You get the whole thing happening at the same time. So now you can't just look at Pluto. You have to look at Pluto and Eris. And look at this. We're 80 years into studying Pluto. And just now in the last 20 years are we really getting our handle on it. So it's going to take us time studying Eris. These outer planets reveal their natures very slowly. So we are very excited that over the next several months we have some very exciting guests that are going to be talking about Eris, but tonight is definitely a Pluto night. What have we not gone into here?
Well, I think one thing that when we were figuring out what we were going to talk about tonight, we didn't really think about the huge issue of immigration, which is also part of our identity crisis as a country. Mm-hmm. So I think we have to put that in the mix too.
Well, because all systems, that's another cancer problem. Systems we know in physics can't be closed. Systems have to let things in and let things out. They just, all systems have to. The body has to breathe and let out the excrement. And with the body of the United States trying to freeze in a cancer state where we're fine, don't let anybody in, and we'll be fine, just lock the door, it does not work. We have to get healthy immigration laws, not unhealthy ones. We have to start executing the laws that have been on the books. And we have to find ways. On the other end, look at you. Here's your expertise. On the other end, getting rid of people. What does that mean is the whole hospice movement. So what has changed in the last 10 years as far as hospice? It's and people wanting to be cremated, not wanting to go with that whole change?
Yeah, well, I think that's part and parcel of, hospice there's always been hospice through history in one sense or another, but the modern hospice movement is fairly recent. I think started in the 70s with a British woman, Cecily Saunders, Dame Cecily Saunders. But in the United States, it came to the United States in the mid 80s. But anyway, I think it's also part of when that started was the beginning of people in the United States starting to take spirituality more seriously. It's not necessarily part of a church-based type of thing, and started becoming more interested in Eastern religions and all of that. But I work in hospice, and I've seen over time great changes in how people that I work with think about death, issues of quality of life and death and what that means, and doing things that are, having much more personal beliefs and having much more personal rituals around those kinds of things than it was when I started doing hospice work. So,
well, you can even see small changes like in the marital traditions where they used to throw rice and now they throw seeds. You can just see the advancement of consciousness, and a lot of people get very cynical and political correctness. Then you turn around and you find out nobody wants to be treated unfairly. We're becoming more aware. We don't want to be treated unfairly. Yeah, I think it stinks myself that you play a soccer game, it has to end 0-0. I think that's going too far. Everybody gets a trophy. I think that's way too far. But we are getting more politically correct now, and we are starting to feel those days that John likes to talk about so favorably. He's so excited. Maybe we need to hear from John for a minute. John, what do you foresee around 2024 when Pluto goes into Aquarius?
Hey, Rick. Hey, Liza. Hey, everybody. So I don't know if you saw my kind of comments that I made to Suzanne in the chat, but I honestly think, it is scary to see these like extreme right-wing movements pop up, and it's like, where did all this stuff come from? But if you look at just kind of the fundamental, like what Capricorn is about and all this whole like ultra-conservative sort of push, Capricorn by its nature tends to lean conservative, not necessarily politically so, but just, as you always say, Rick, make sure. So think about Pluto coming into this energy now and pushing it to its extreme, and so you get this sort of like conservative impulse, which is like, we're going to go back to the old ways of doing things, to 1950s, to the 1930s, whatever that looked like, and just, we're going to make sure that the old ways, old authoritarian forces are unstoppable. And so that's why all this stuff seems to be coming up. Because remember, too, Pluto brings all this stuff up from the underground. All these things that have been laying dormant, all these, old feelings, ideas that have been laying dormant since,
What about when it gets to Aquarius? What do you expect?
I think all that's, it's going to come to an end. I think it's going to run out of steam. Just as, if everybody remembers, and I know you remember, seems like back in the late 90s, 2000s, it was religion. We saw this big, religion was everywhere. This was back when Pluto was in Sagittarius. All these Sagittarian themes were front and center. And then literally when Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2008 and 9, it seems like big churches started folding in, closing down. All these like big religious institutions start running into problems. The Catholic Church and, the pre-scandals that they had with molesting kids. So I think what we're going to see with Pluto and Aquarius is that we're going to see literally conservative structures, groups falling apart. Our infrastructure, as Liza talked about, also falling apart. And I think just because it's like that impulse is going away and the Aquarius energy is going to demand change. Like the old ways can't continue. We're going to have to do radical new ways of things.
Almost every time I see somebody who is pro-Trump, almost every time they have a lot of Capricorn or Cancer in their chart. Okay, and Capricorn and Cancer energies are about preserving the existing status quo, respecting authority. We don't want change, because if we stay inside the box, everything will be okay. And we know that's not true. And the two speakers that verify that are Pluto and Uranus. They just don't verify it. So sometimes some signs are prominent, and yes, and sometimes some signs are not the answer. And if you listen to any sign or any planet, every one of them will tell you, I am the way. Listen to me. I know what I'm doing. I'm Mars. Listen, do things my way, and you'll be okay. Well, it's not true. You can't listen to any one of them. You need a mix. Thank you, John. That was very good. So obviously, as we get to Pluto in Aquarius, I think we're going to start to see the critical thing, which is this far out lesson that Jesus tried, which was the golden rule. We still can't learn the rule number one. We still can't learn rule number one, and I'm being collective with. And I really think we're starting to see groups like this. This group really heartens me, because I know you're not all here to learn astrology, but it does bring common souls to a common ground. And I think it is kind of like a weekly vitamin shot, because we get to meet with each other and encourage each other, because everybody, there's so many people now doing such interesting things. And I know Elke was talking earlier about doing some really neat stuff. I want to go to Stephen now, if Stephen doesn't mind. Stephen has been our guest a couple of times on the show. He's a wonderful hypnotist and a regressive hypnotist. Steve, I wanted to ask you, because I know a lot of people want to go through regression because they want to find an escape, or they want them to find an excuse for their behavior. But there's a real positive thing that people are doing with it too. What do you find people that are getting regressed are coming out with, the results of it, where it's real positive?
Very good. Yes, a lot of people, if I were to kind of describe a larger theme here with many, many clients, is that they have come across, whether there be the family systems or their communities, or a letdown in their business endeavors and so forth. And so there is, number one, a feeling that they are searching, that things have let them down, whether that be family or the larger societies. And they want to find out, okay, I have to be a little bit more self-reliant. And so what's my story? And so then they personally, not only through self-improvement techniques and taking classes and so forth, but through the sessions that I offer, they really want to find out their own personal odyssey, the karma that perhaps they have created, things that they personally have to...
all the DNA testing, it also.
Exactly, all of that too, partly because they're becoming less and less reliant on the community and the society.
That all points towards us heading towards Pluto and Aquarius. Pluto and Aquarius is, we all have to be separate pillars to hold up the roof. We can't be too close and the roof falls down. So I think that it is hard for a sun sign to learn another sun sign, and it is not natural for a Cancer society to start learning Aquarian principles. It's not easy. And that's why there's a lot of division and a lot of groups pointing at each other saying, you're messing things up, and why can't things be the old ways? Well, because they can't. And then there's a lot of disinformation and a lot of people capitalizing in the middle by twisting the news. So there's a real fake news, and then there's a fake news that's not a fake news, which is really confusing. And that gets to the planet Neptune, which we're not going to talk about. But what do you find, Stephen, when these people start to, it sounds to me like these people want to get a stronger sense of their identity, instead of identifying with my husband and my family, I'm also a me.
That's right. And it's a very good Pluto theme, because you have to, first of all, take stock of self, as well as your family, and what you have done and what they have done. And then you have to jettison all of the negativity, the self-doubt, the hurts, the pains, and then upon that new foundation, build yourself up and find out what is of value to you or to each and every one of us in creating, let's say, a better, more fulfilling life.
Well, as a Scorpio, personally, what have you noticed in the past 10 years that's happened to the Cancer country becoming more scorpionic?
I take a look at history, taking a look at this Cancer country too. And the last time that Pluto was in Capricorn, of course, here we had the American Revolution. And thinking about the Capricorn Cancer polarity, this was a country, the colonies, that was rebelling against the parents, which is the United Kingdom, England. And so it was a revolution against the family, the old family, and I'm going to be independent. And of course, that means that there's going to be a revolution and people are going to be kicked out. As then it went into the next sign, Aquarius, again, last cycle, then we had the French Revolution. And not only that, but the Industrial Revolution. At the same time, those were happening. And then it was more about rebelling against the system, was in France, as it were. And remember that we're talking about the polarities there. And the polarity of Aquarius is Leo, and they got rid of the royal family.
Well, I think a lot of people could benefit by looking on my website to an article called, kind of glib title, Pluto Will Help You, but it's really not glib. Pluto will help you. If you play along, Pluto will help you. And I've seen it so much, and I'd especially like to hear from our Scorpios tonight in case you want to add something. And what I mean by that, if my client tells me, well, people aren't treating me very well, blah, 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 I don't really expect things to change much. And if people are telling me, people really aren't treating me very well, and I've been getting rid of this, I've been trying this, and I'm going back to school, and I'm trying that, I start to get encouraged. I got a call today from a woman I read for from Saudi Arabia. And she's a Cancer. And she's going through a lot of headaches. And I looked and I saw Pluto's at 18 degrees Capricorn. Her sun is at 18 degrees Cancer, which explains the headaches, the exact opposition. But then I started to hear from her, and I started to tell her the secret to what she's got to work on is the codependent thread, being a Cancer. And she started telling me about how she's dating somebody who's treating her very well, and they're getting along well. And I said, are you really exchanging, or is this just a comfort thing? She said, no, it's a real healthy exchange. I said to her right away, I think you're doing well. I don't think you need a reading. I'm here if you want one, but it sounds to me like you're working through your basic nature. The headaches, the planets put off spittle. When a planet hits you, I don't care what it is, the big planets, I don't care how smooth you are or what you're wearing, when they hit you, they put off spittle. Things happen around the edges. You get distraught kind of experiences. You get a little chaos with Uranus, no matter what. You get a little bit of a slap in the face with Pluto, no matter what. But all in all, if you're trying, that's why I can't tell you, and Liza will back me up, I'm sure. I can't tell you how many hundreds of people I've talked with who their life started to get better as soon, and this is not a metaphor, this is specific. Their life started to get better as soon as they started to clean out their basement. I mean, clean out the basement.
Literally.
And it's amazing that they all get this archetypal influence. I want it all gone. It's all go. I gotta go. That's very Plutonian. And what it does, I know I'm dominating and I don't want to do that. What it does in my mind is it says, I don't want to live in this dark heart anymore. I don't want to live in this dark heart anymore. I put up to it for a while. I had to, but I want to open it up. Let's get some light in here. Let's get this junk out of here. And then what have we observed?
That people who start moving in that direction and with that intention do start to see change right away.
What kind of things are they seeing?
I'm not sure what you're...
Well, they're seeing better relationships.
Yeah.
They're
Better jobs.
Like with you,
Yeah.
you get a job opportunity within minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about change within minutes or the next day. There is no planet that comes by to bring you Mr. Right or Miss Right. But you start letting go of your stuff, it's unbelievable how within minutes or days, it all turns around. There are theories why, but I really would like to hear from our two Scorpios. I think we have two here to tell us more about what is it that breaks your heart when you look at the non-Scorpios and you realize they're non-Scorpios and you realize they don't have the abilities that you have. What is the abilities that Scorpios do have, having a bank full of Pluto energy that other people only get it by transit? That make sense? Stephen or Karen, either one of you? What do you find being here? Go ahead.
I gotta move because I don't want you to, there's a television on that somebody's listening to, so I want to
Okay.
get out of earshot. I guess I've just generally been, I've been living with Scorpio energy my whole life, so it just seems second nature when all this stuff starts to happen. But what resonated with me about what you were talking about is that I have the issue of codependency has come forward in my life in a huge way over the last 4 years. And that has been that has changed the direction of my life significantly in terms of personal growth and the way I structure my life and that kind of thing. So,
well, we've had our other Cancer get called to dinner, so we lost out on him. We want to thank Stephen for joining us tonight. But what I wanted to ask you about, Karen, and I know you pretty well from classes, what is it that you see, and I know you're a pretty darn good astrologer, what is it that you see when you see these non-Scorpios? Do you see that they could use Scorpio energy, and then you see them going through a Scorpio transit, and you see them starting to pick up that quality? Can you identify and see that? For instance,
okay, yeah, give me an example.
I gave you a good example is I see a lot of people entering into a Pluto transit and they start getting rid of their 59-minute friends. Okay? The ones that talk about themselves for 59 minutes and the last minute they say, "Oh, how are you?" Very uneven friendships, and they're not really good, heartfelt, deep, devoted friendships. A lot of them start putting X's through those kind of relationships, and that really helps them get free.
Yeah, and I see people suddenly making changes in their jobs. When they're realizing that the effort they're putting in is just not worth it because they're not happy there, and they'd rather make the sacrifice and go even for less money than to as long as they were true to their values. And what I see in my circle is a lot of people are doing their inner work. They're digging deep. They're starting to dig deep into the issues that have kind of plagued them or or circulated around the edges of their life, kind of creating issues. So they're really kind of doing their more heavy duty work on themselves.
Heavy lifting. That's a good way of putting it. Okay, this has been very good. I want to open it up for general discussion and questions. I do think that we want to thank our viewers on YouTube and remind you, if you want to join us live any Thursday at 8 o'clock Eastern, just go to starself.com/unplugged, or you can just go to Google and search Star Self Unplugged. It'll take you there. But we'll have this up and running on YouTube tomorrow as episode 102, I think. But thank you on YouTube from us Unpluggers, and we'll